Today we're looking at tweets from Donald J. Trump from August 14th. Oh my goodness, Thomas, he was up at 5:59 a.m. and here's his tweet. Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch, quote, "The Strzok firing is as much about the Mueller operation as anything else. There would be no Mueller special counsel to investigate so-called collusion, but for the machinations of Strzok and his colleagues at the top levels of the FBI. We know this." Shall I read into the next tweet? "Guy was corrupt and had anti-Trump animus. Strzok and others at the FBI should be criminally investigated for the way they conducted this investigation. Instead, Mueller is pretending nothing went wrong. He used Strzok, he used the Clinton DNC dossier. The whole thing should be shut down. The Strzok firing shows that the fundamental underpinnings of the investigation were corrupt. It should be shut down by the courts or by honest prosecutors. Thank you, Judicial Watch. I couldn't have said it myself better."
Well, Betsy, it's an honor to attempt to decode the Trump tweets as always. And this one is beautiful because our hero, Clark Kent, who is actually Tom Fenton, but if you look closely, he's Clark Kent, Superman.
You see, he's got those glasses. He rips them off, and his biceps are pumped, and he's ready for action.
He is ready, and he is our hero because every single week they come up with more stuff that just shows the corruption. And at this point, they used to try to, Larry Klayman and the whole group, Chris Farrell, be very, very nonpartisan. But at this point, you have to be partisan. You have to see that this was an attack of the weaponized Obama Democrat Party with Hillary against Trump. So when he makes these statements, it isn't because he is a Trumpite. No, he gives the Trump administration a hard time too when they don't do what they're supposed to do. So this is an objective statement, and it is absolutely accurate. Now, what's very interesting is the star witness, as we pointed out, for the Mueller Special Counsel investigation, which is really a continuation of the Crossfire Hurricane operation started by Brennan. And again, Giuliani just dropped the bomb saying that if you really want to go after people, Strzok isn't the guy. He's the fall guy. The real guy is John Brennan.
Yeah, but you've been saying that for months now.
Yes.
If not over a year.
Right. And then you can go back even further with all Comey's 28 attempted acts of treason. But what we're saying here, and this is beautiful, is that the Strzok machinations, I'm even going to interpret what Mr. Fenton means by this. The machinations were that he carried with him, after he had his top secret security clearance revoked, into the special counsel investigation, top secret security clearance, the ability to manipulate the FISA courts, even at that time, to be able to submit and receive from the FISA courts. Also, the ability to create national security letters. That's what Strzok had when he brought it to the Robert Mueller Special Counsel investigation. He brought all these powers. There are very few people, if any, besides Strzok, who are both field operation officers in the CIA and in the FBI counterintelligence. That's extremely rare. And for him to have handled not only the frame-up of George Papadopoulos and the dossier and the Carter Page dossier frame-up and the exonerating Hillary Clinton and not even having an investigation, exonerating Huma Abedin, and then going after Trump and continuing into 12 different forms. Peter Strzok had 12 different forms. First off, it started off as an interagency group. And then it was the Crossfire Hurricane. And then it was the small group. And then it was the group to stop the elections. Then it was the secret group. And then it had so many names. And so what we're dealing with here is a clear description that because Strzok has been fired, his machinations, which we know all about, mean that the entire Robert Mueller Special Counsel investigation is tainted because their star witness is not only corrupt and been fired, but been shown over and over again to have political bias, unbelievable animus hatred towards Trump, and on and on and on and on. The fact that it is not closing down means one thing for certain: Jeff Sessions needs to go to jail. Period. We're done with him. He's no longer just an enemy of the state. and enemy of the people.
Well, people are getting very frustrated out there. I hear the videos, I read what they're writing.
But again, you're seeing everybody and whose side they're on as he stands back and lets the political machinations of Washington, D.C. play out. He cannot drain the swamp quickly. It'll poison everything around it. All of America would be poisoned if we simply called... We couldn't have a federal government.
Well, what do you say to the people that are writing and talking quite frequently, more than I've ever seen before, that questioning whether or not Trump is really going to do what he said he was in terms of the swamp? I know what your answer is going to be, but I think folks need to hear the other side of that.
20 months ago, however long it's been, Robert Mueller was considered to be the most ethical person in Washington, D.C. Who is he now? He's the criminal who covered up for 9/11. He's the criminal behind the special counsel investigation operation, which is really an attempted coup d'etat against the president. Name anyone in the swamp who hasn't been revealed. Now, when what you want is justice, well, there is no justice, not right now, not in the federal government. It's all fake justice until Trump appoints the 1,400 people who are waiting, whose names he's already submitted, and he gets those people in position. There is no justice in America in the federal government. That is a system of basically a continuation of the monarchy that thinks that they have the same powers of the ecclesiastical churches. They think that they are immune. These judges, the judge just ruled again, an appellate judge, federal appellate judge court rules against something that Donald Trump is doing, the president. That's not even legal.
It's not constitutional.
And it's not constitutional, and the people who are above them, the judges above them, need to reprimand them, if not simply kick them out. They kicked out all...
They can be impeached.
Recently, they kicked out all the Supreme Court members in an entire state because of corruption. You can get rid of...
A ruling on the Leader Technologies v. Facebook case.
Absolutely. These judges enrich themselves by insider trading. That's the way that it goes. When you're a political appointment to a position of absolute supremacy that no one seems to be able to question, any of these judges except hired judges who never explain why they do things like put Judge Chutkan in charge of the case for the Imran Alwan case just so that Imran Alwan can be given complete immunity, or Judge Leon being put in charge of the case of Fusion GPS when it was his best friend John Podesta, who he teaches at Georgetown with to this very day, who was the person who paid $12 million illegally to Fusion GPS. There is no justice right now. It's not going to happen by justice. It's going to happen right now by the court of public opinion. And that's going to put MAGA candidates in office. And then when we can get rid of some of this evil, because the evil is so pervasive. I mean, just look at a Nancy Pelosi. If you don't know she is a corrupt politician, then you haven't investigated for 1 second. If you don't know that Dianne Feinstein is a corrupt politician and what she's done in the Senate Intelligence Committee is so corrupt she should be put in jail, then you simply haven't even read the news. Even the mainstream media news has pointed out what has been going on in that committee. And let's remember that Dianne Feinstein's assistant, Daniel Jones, is still running an operation against President Trump and helping Robert Mueller's special counsel investigation sham through Penn Quarter Group. $50 million, some of it given by Soros, George Soros, some of it given by Oleg Deripaska. $50 million to this moment. So if Fusion GPS is not being prosecuted for what they did with the Democratic National Committee and Hillary and Podesta basically buying foreign influence to affect our election, what do you think is going to happen with these new cases? They have to simply come into the light. And no one believes them anymore. Or is someone going to believe Keith Ellison anymore? Why did Keith Ellison go down? Why? Because he came out and he said his own alibi for what happened in the DNC. And then what happens, his own personal history comes out and we get to see that he is who he is. That's what's going on. We are not going to see the DOJ closed down, the FBI closed down, the CIA closed down. You do that, they kill him. That's a fact. JFK is proof of that. He tried to close down the CIA. He fired Allen Dulles. Allen Dulles then worked with George H.W. Bush and others, committed the assassination of JFK.
Don't forget now we've got Ted Cruz's father in that mix too, that he is trying to keep a lid on, but we have a memory out here in the internet.
Yes, and then what happens? Then Alan Dulles is put in charge of the investigation for the assassination. The very man who committed the crime. And so when you look at the 911 commission, there was no commission. There was no investigation, and Mueller provided no information whatsoever except false propaganda to indicate the wrong people were guilty. To this moment, Mueller has done nothing, zero, about 911
Has
when
he
was in
hauled in
charge.
George Bush or Dick Cheney or any of these neocons that were behind this? No, nothing. So they can call it anything they want. They can call it the 9/11 Commission, or they can even call it the Mueller investigation. But really what these are cover-ups. That's what's really going on. They just label it something different.
Yeah, cover their trails. I now see in even mainstream media people saying, oh, it looks like Mueller's just there to cover his trail.
Duh.
Hello, we told you he would be appointed before he was ever appointed. Why? And we told you Rod Rosenstein would take that position. Why did we know that? Because these people have been in this criminal activity since the late 70s together. They've been non-stop stealing patents and ripping off America and holding some of the highest offices in the country.
The next tweet is a quote from Lou Dobbs. This cannot go forward. This special counsel, with all of his conflicts and with his 17 angry Democrats, without any evidence of collusion by the Trump campaign in Russia. The Dems are the ones who should be investigated. Close quote. Trump adds, thank you, Lou, so true.
Now, what's really absolutely absurd about this entire thing is that everybody knows it shouldn't go forward, and yet it is going forward. And when you read the far left, and yes, I am quite aware that to say fascists and communists are talking about the far left and the far right, just to point that out to one of our listeners. When you look at the far left and the story that they tell, oh, they're going to harp on the 21 indictments. Well, because there was a single indictment, as far as they're concerned, Trump's guilty. Just like the 13 women that Trump raped, that people put all over the news. There were no rapes. There were not even a single charge of sexual inappropriateness ever in his life, and he's a billionaire. That's almost impossible because rich people get sued for that all the time. So think of this, folks. They have nothing to really attack him on. This special investigation, everyone is screaming for it to close, but we really don't want it to close. As a matter of fact, as it continues on towards November, every single thing that Robert Mueller does now is going to be seen as nothing more than politicalization of his very partisan view. And as has been pointed out, why aren't the Democrats being investigated? Not one Democrat. How many pieces of information that we can give you right now off the top of my head? I can probably give you 250 pieces of information that could be used in a special counsel investigation against Hillary and the Democratic intervention and rigging and attempted meddling, but also collusion with Russia, collusion with foreign agents. Right now, 250. No problem. I could do a lot more if I had more time. How many do they have on Trump? None. But those 21 indictments on people who cannot be indicted, who will never come to court, who are actually eating up Robert Mueller in court, the one that has shown, Concord Catering has shown up and making a complete fool of him. But of course, the judge just ruled another crooked ruling in favor that Mueller's investigation is legal, which it is not.
Dabney Frederick, right? And she is a senior executive service operative. We found her in the Plum Book in 2004. And of course, she's covering for her senior executive service guy, Robert Mueller. This is the same team. They protect each other.
And I disagree with Lou that it has to stop now. I agree with Trump that he keeps saying that it should stop, that there's no collusion, there's no corruption, there's no obstruction, there's no possibility for any of those things. Rat Rodenstein has already told us that SS Herr Mueller has found no collusion, no connection whatsoever between the Trump team and Russia. None, zero. The people who were indicted, that wasn't for connecting to Trump. Those are crazy, insane indictments that mean absolutely nothing. So why doesn't it end? We don't want it to end, folks. We want it to continue until every single member of this conspiracy has been brought to light.
The next tweet is about Omarosa. When you give a crazed, crying lowlife a break and give her a job at the White House, I guess it just didn't work out. Good work by General Kelly for quickly firing that dog. Ooh, we all know what he means.
Now, if he had said female dog,
well, okay, we got it.
We would be really,
right?
That would be the
she
fight.
She was a bad girl.
She's a cur. She's a dog, as in a Shakespearean way of referring to it.
She needs to be arrested. That's all.
Oh, she will be.
I hope she is.
She's going
somebody's got to start doing this.
There's a multi-million-dollar suit against her right now, and it's not
by whom?
The Trump campaign.
Oh, okay.
As we had told people before, Trump entered the 2020 campaign so that when people attack him, he can go after them. As the president, you can pretty much say everything but that you want to harm him terribly. That is illegal, and you can be put in jail. That's a felony. But in essence, you can criticize the president all you want, but you cannot criticize a campaign, especially with slander, especially if you've already signed a non-disclosure agreement, and especially when it's being used as another attempted October surprise. You see, she was supposed to come out and this was supposed to be the closing page in the impeachment of Donald Trump, when in fact she can't find anybody to support her story, which then does what? It works the exact opposite. And everyone who is supporting her is going to be seen in that light. So once again, go ahead, attack Donald Trump. It's going to turn on you folks because he didn't do those bad things that you are lying about. So he's called her a lowlife. He's called her a dog. Well, now he should call her just a criminal because her actions are not only criminal, but they're treasonous. You do not take a tape recorder into the Situation Room. You do not record the President of the United States or anybody else in the White House when you have a job there. You sign agreements that state that you will not, under any circumstances, do that. Take pictures, take recordings, anything. Take documents. No.
If she's not arrested, then people will know they'll be able to get away with it, and they'll always be able to say, well, you let Omarosa get away with it.
Well, what they need to do is sue her, and then when she owes all that money and she can't pay, then they can take further legal actions. But they need to show that when people now are going to attack Trump family members, they can be sued.
Well, what about the publisher? Can the publisher be sued by publishing something that's not true?
If they know that it's not true and they broadcast it, there are certain actions that can be taken. There's one law, Decency in Broadcasting Act, and it says that if you consciously and willfully broadcast what you know to be lies, you can be fined and closed down. So we need to find them and close them down.
The next tweet is another terrorist attack in London. These animals are crazy and must be dealt with through toughness and strength.
And there's no toughness and no strength whatsoever in the mayor of London. He tries to make excuses for these things. Acid attacks? It doesn't matter whether you took all the guns out of Britain today, they would pick up rocks. You know that there's a machete attack in Britain, in Europe, which includes Britain, every 15 minutes. Okay? This is Rwanda. This is Darfur. This is South Sudan. What we have here is an outright civil war that isn't even being acknowledged. As a matter of fact, they are apologizing to the people who are killing them. And they're putting the people who criticize the people who kill them in jail. Britain, I don't know that the United Kingdom, particularly Britain or the European Union, some of the countries can even come back. Sweden, France, Germany, all the lies that what's coming out now in Germany, even Angela Merkel wants to send them all back. 26 of the 28 nations voted to get rid of all the migrants, send them all back, all.
But yet George Soros continues to be funded through the Ukrainian Council and NATO, and these are U.S. taxpayer dollars.
Oh, he steals from his quantum hedge fund taxpayer dollars every single day of our life. His last cache of money, $18 billion in stolen money that he didn't pay taxes on from America because they move it into offshore accounts. What's happening with that? Nothing. as we have insinuated, that Trump has put sanctions on Soros. He might have, and the last person that would tell you that he had done that would be Trump, and the last person to tell you that those sanctions had been put on him would be Soros. But look at the sanctions put in Turkey. He specifically put it on two people. One of them he knew would end Fethullah Gulen's ripoff of $2.1 billion from charter schools here in America. So when Trump puts a sanction on somebody, sometimes they complain, like right now, Turkey's ready to go to war over these sanctions with us. Isn't that beautiful? That's how crazy Erdogan is. He's a complete fascist. He is a nutcase. He believes he's a paranoid nutcase, like almost all dictators. He believes that they're all coming after him, and so he's accusing now America of being part of the attempted overthrow of Erdogan. No, your own people want to overthrow you, President Erdogan, because of all that you've done to them, the horrible things you've done, not to mention the part that you played in creating the Syrian refugees. So what we see is that there are things going on behind the scenes that sometimes make loud noises in the press and sometimes don't make any noises at all, but Trump is active, and he's using U.S. Marshals and the U.S. Treasury Department to go after the criminals who are attacking America.
Bruce Orr of the Justice Department, can you believe he's still there, is accused of helping disgraced Christopher Steele find dirt on Trump. Orr's wife, Nellie, was in on the act big time, worked for Fusion GPS on fake dossier.
Nellie just moved, within minutes out of the CIA's program, Open Source Works, which the FBI also uses, over to Fusion GPS just when they needed somebody to help write this dossier and coordinate the dossier and start listening to Russian news so that they could put little Russian tidbits of news into this dossier, because she got her broadcasting license, and she got a ham radio set up that she could listen to Russian broadcasts so that they could put in information that Christopher Steele didn't even have access to. Christopher Steele was no longer with the MI6. He was a washed-out, pathetic desk sitter in Russia who didn't have any connections in Russia. So how was he going to get the highest connections that you can get in the Russian government, especially in intelligence, when he didn't know anything about Russia? That's because we used real Russians. John McCain gave the names of... Oh,
by the way, where is John McCain? Has anybody sent in proof of life?
No proof of life.
Has anybody out there got a current, like in the last day, video of John McCain in the hospital bed or wherever he is waving to us?
But he just got his NDAA John McCain bill passed. Uh-huh. Isn't that funny? So John McCain's not even there. But somehow he wrote the new NDAA, which is the number one document for evil in America, the National Defense Authorization Act. It's how we spend our money on the military each year. But good news about that. One of your readers sent in 3 references in this extremely long NDAA document, this bill. And I'd already been going through it, but that helped. Thank you.
It was Sherry. Thank you, Sherry.
I was looking for one of the 3 that she gave us. And as I read it and reread it, I realized that Trump has taken out some of the language. And it looks as if he took some of it out last year also. So it looks as if propaganda is not blatantly legal anymore in America, and that the Global Engagement Center has been curtailed in their activities to propagandize America. Thank you very much, Mr. Trump. And John McCain, because you weren't there to oversee this NDAA, they put your name on it, but they really took out of it some of the evil that you so much love engendering.
What did they do with the senior executive service operatives that are in the military?
Well, you asked me to look at that.
Yeah.
And the sunset clause just simply means that in the next 2 years they're going to make sure this happens. What that clause means is it says point blank that the Secretary of Defense can appoint 100% unqualified people into any position he wants in the Department of Defense at any time, with or without a clearance, with or without experience, and it clearly states without the ability to pass a merit exam for that job.
What is up with that? We're trying to clear the swamp of these people.
Well, that was probably a John McCain thing that he did sneak in before he went off to...
Well, where is he? We don't know. We don't even know if he's dead or alive.
Well, he could be in the happy hunting grounds because, he's going to be hunting. He's still going to be dropping bombs even if he's not around anymore here. So what he's really doing is making sure that certain things were built in, and then it looks like people behind his back made sure things weren't left in there that Obama had illegally put in 2012. Illegally because they are against the United States Constitution and the U.S. Bill of Rights. You can't declare every American to be a terrorist until otherwise proven guilty. That's just ridiculous. That's what Obama did.
Well, that's what anti-Americans do. They're globalists. They're paid for by the globalists, and they're doing the will of the globalists who want to take over America. But enough of that hoo-ha. Let's move on to the next one. I know you'll pick it up from there. This is a quote from Greg Jarrett, Fox and Friends. Quote, "They were all in on it. Clear Hillary Clinton and frame Donald Trump for things he didn't do." Close quote. And then Trump continues, "If we had a real attorney general, this witch hunt would never have been started, looking at the wrong people." I am just absolutely amazed how many people out there in the comment boxes that I read still think that Jeff Sessions is playing this 5D chess and he's going to come out the hero here.
No, that's incorrect. And he has already shown himself to be who he is, and Donald Trump doesn't lie. So when he says he's disgraced, and it's disgraceful by what Jeff Sessions has done, when he says all the negative things about Jeff Sessions and Jeff Sessions doesn't step down, that just shows how corrupt Sessions really is. Now, I want to go back to the previous one. Bruce Orr contacted Christopher Steele 60 times. 60 times. Were they lovers? I mean, I have to ask the question, were they sex texting? What is going on? Bruce Orr should have never, ever contacted Christopher Steele. Bruce Orr was representing Hillary Clinton's seventh floor of the Secretary of State and Victoria Nuland, and he simply was the go-between between all of them. He was the linchpin. He was the apex. And he never backed off. He hasn't been fired. And you'll hear some of these phrases here with Peter Strzok, the same phrases they used with Andrew McCabe, the same phrases they're using with Bruce Orr, because why? They're all SES. You can't fire these people. So what they say is, well, we can't follow the regular procedure. Oh, I don't know. We're really upset. We can't follow the regular procedure, which is you can't fire them. You can't fire Bruce Orr until you indict him, bring some criminal activity. So when they fired Peter Strzok, it was not because they found anything criminal, because all the evidence that was presented, he got to present himself. He got to filter through it with Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General's approval, and only give evidence that he approved. Peter Strzok gave the evidence that he had to testify against, okay?
Well, so you're a senior executive service employee, and you can commit treason, outright treason against the United States, but you can't be fired.
Nellie Orr committed treason. I'm certain that she kept her security clearance and probably access, because she literally says in some descriptions that Glenn Simpson did a great job with his wife writing this, but that we really used open source works. That was what she was working a week before with the CIA. Okay, now what we're talking about here is treason, folks. She left the CIA to go work for an opposition research company when she knew that they had money from the opposition party of Trump. They were fighting him illegally, and she was illegally creating lies, propaganda, and whatever information she could string together from Cody Shearer and from Comey and from John Brennan and from everybody else. And they were all strung together, and then they were given to Christopher Steele. Christopher Steele's an idiot. A complete 100% idiot. He has worked for the government, our government, for a long time, but you can't name anything he ever did. Same thing with Stephen Halper, the guy who framed...
Yeah, but they're spies. We shouldn't know what they are doing, right?
No, they clearly state what they were paid for, and they aren't qualified for what they were paid for.
Well, they're SES, so you don't have to be qualified for your job.
Here's what Stephen Halper did. He created 3 banks that laundered money for politicians in Washington, D.C. This is an absolute known fact. They had to close these banks down. And yet he still is on the payroll of the State Department, the Department of Defense, probably the CIA and the FBI. Christopher Steele was on the FBI, State Department, CIA. We don't know how much money these people were paid because we have yet to even scrape the surface of what was really going on. We only are hearing about one dossier, and we're only hearing about one FISA court abuse. There were many FISA courts abuse. Some were international, some were domestic. We are only hearing about one domestic one. And when we get the 20 pages that Devin Nunes keeps referring to, it sounds as if the people who signed them are going down. And we hear many lawyers saying, yes, they committed crimes. When they signed those documents, that was fraudulent. They knew that the dossier was paid for by the Democratic National Committee. They never told the judge that, ever, in all the 4 renewals. They all have to go to jail. This is the worst violation of their security clearances, especially with the FISA court, which is the most delicate of all courts in America. They abused it insanely. So, Bruce Orr, Nellie Orr, they are treasonous. They are not Americans. They are domestic enemies, and they are, in fact, attempting to this very day, because they have yet to be arrested and they're still in their positions. And I suggest that Fusion GPS has never stopped working opposition research against Trump, and it just simply went over to Daniel Jones.
Perkins Coie still continues on. I'm telling you, if you see anything that's related, person, place, or thing that has to do with Perkins Coie, you need to put up your BS monitor on, because these people do nothing but create havoc for MAGA.
Jim Jordan was accused by someone who was a Perkins Coie person that they had somehow interviewed, and now that very person who swore on national television that Jim Jordan was aware has now recanted. You want to know why? Because it's a crime. And the other people, and did you notice that there was like 3 or 4 people, and then all of a sudden there were 200? There weren't any 200. There never was 100. There was never 4. That is the way that Perkins Coie works. They create disinformation. These are people who worked previously for the mainstream media. Glenn Simpson worked for, I think, New York Times or Washington Post, one of the biggest agencies, lying agencies out there. And most of his people came from there too. So what did they do? They found that lying from mainstream media is so unchecked that they went into a professional company that does nothing but lie, and they are one of the most powerful forces in Washington, D.C. right now.
Fired FBI agent Peter Strzok is a fraud, as is the rigged investigation he started. There was no collusion or obstruction with Russia, and everybody, including the Democrats, know it. The only collusion and obstruction was by Crooked Hillary, the Democrats, and the DNC. Then the next one, related. Strzok started the illegal rigged witch hunt. Why isn't this so-called probe ended immediately? Why aren't these angry and conflicted Democrats instead looking at Crooked Hillary?
Oh, right. Peter Strzok is a fraud. He was the star witness. It was rigged. He lied. He lied from the beginning. He was actually, if you really want to know the bottom line, here's the bottom line. Peter Strzok was put in charge of Sergei Milian Parachenko and a number of other Russians, including Natalia Veselnitskaya and a number of others I could name. But the point is, they went out looking for the PP video. That's what this was all about. John Brennan heard that Victoria Nuland heard that someone in Ukraine said that they know someone in Russia who has a video of Donald Trump being peed on by prostitutes. That's what this was all about. Believe it or not. That's why Nunes says the entire Crossfire Hurricane operation never had any intelligence. There was no intelligence ever received. And what that means is there was no video.
They just made it up.
They made it up.
And because they're not creative people, they could only use their own experiences to put into this little fairy tale. So they're the ones that are probably peeing on each other in beds in foreign countries.
And I want to point out that Trump is right. The illegal rigged witch hunt, Crossfire Hurricane, which is now Mueller's special counsel investigation, was really started by Strzok, because John Brennan is such a wuss that he has never claimed any part of this, even though he testified before Congress and said that he started it. Now he says he had nothing to do with it. Lie. He started that part of it. in July of 2016, the official, which was 100% illegal, CIA operation against a candidate running for president inside of the border of America. Does this sound funny to anybody? The CIA is not allowed to work inside the border of America, and let alone against somebody running in an election. John Brennan is the big criminal, as Giuliani is pointing out, that nobody seems to be paying attention to. And then there's Liar Clapper, and all the rest of them. But Brennan tries to get out of it, but he's already testified that he started it. So it was rigged, and it was started by Strzok, but Comey was in there to begin with also, and it was started by the DNC when they found out that they were going to be hammered over the Russian won collusion with Russia, as well as all of the rest of their collusion. And Trump points out here that they themselves now have obstructed. Yes, they have obstructed. And Trump didn't obstruct. And there was collusion, and Trump didn't collude. So eventually, folks, I promise you, there will be a special counsel investigation to look at the Democratic side of this, and it is going to take a long time, and there's going to be a lot of indictments. So until that starts, you will not see anybody being indicted, because you are dealing with the deep state shadow government, SES, and the corrupt people at the top. The people at the top are the most corrupt. And now we have Devin Nunes literally saying there's no one at the top of any of these intelligence agencies that wasn't part of this. In other words, the conspiracy was comprehensive, and it was led by Barry Soetoro, Barack Hussein Obama himself.